My father was a returned man. He was in World War One. He lost an arm at Amiens. Oh, there was nothing he couldn't do. He was an amazing man. He could do more with his one arm. In fact, he used to roll his cigarettes one hand, and I've seen people come up to him and say, "Gosh, you can do that faster than I can with two hands." He had it hard to get a job naturally, and but he finally landed a job with the Water Board, which fortunately was a permanent job. But that was during the Depression. They only got half wages each week, and they worked 2 days one week and 3 days the next week, which is a good idea because it saved them sacking people. You know, half a wage is better than none. And anyway, he and Mum battled, you know, right through the Depression. And myself had two brothers, and we both had to leave at 15 after we got the intermediate certificate and go out and look for a job. And then war broke out. Well, I always wanted to fly, so I immediately applied to join the Air Force. I thought I had a hope of getting in then, because prior to that, you know, you didn't have a hope of getting into the Air Force, just like getting a job. And that's it. From then on, I went through the training, and that's where I got my ear problems. A few days after starting the Air Force, they took us down to the butts and fired a 303. Well, I'd never fired one in my life, and my first shot, I had to get down and, you know, take one shot at the target, and I thought the bullet had gone in one ear and out the other. And I got up and I said to the corporal, "Have you got any earplugs?" And he said, "No, you've got to finish that magazine." So I got down, I finished the magazine, and I was completely deaf after that. Just my ears were screeching. I couldn't hear a thing. And I knew then if I went sick with it, well, I couldn't couldn't fly aircraft. So they kicked me out, but I didn't want that. So I stayed in, and I used to, if I was out on the parade ground drilling, I'd get into the back line and follow what the fellow in front of me was doing. In the classroom, I'd watch look what the fellow next to me was writing. I'd write that down in my book. But it finally faded away until just the ringing in the ears, you know. I want to be a pilot. I was like every other young bloke in those days. We all want to fly, you know, all the flying that was going on, you know, new flying records being put up, England to Australia and all that sort of business. You know, it's always a big news item. We all want to fly. But, and when I applied, I was put down for training as a pilot. But when I got actually in, that was scrapped, and they just went through and recalibrated everybody, and I ended up Wallace Op Air Gunner. Went to Canada, and I did pretty well there, and in wireless I came second. There were about, in our course of Australians, New Zealanders and Canadians, there could have been, could have been about 1,200 in a course, and I came second in that. Then we went to gunnery, another place, and I topped gunnery. And so when we passed out, the 4 were picked for commissions, and fortunately I got a commission. Then we had to get to Halifax from there, and they gave us a couple of days extra, you know, to to get to Halifax. Got there, and then we got onto a ship. It was an armed merchant vessel run by the Navy. It was a French ship that had been taken from the French when they collapsed, and they renamed it. It was called the Montcalm. They renamed it the Wolfe because General Wolfe beat General Montcalm in Canada. There were two others, three of these armed merchant crews went over. And I realised the benefit of being an officer because on the ship I was given my own cabin and I dined at meals with the ship's officers. And all my mates, they just put down into the hold of the ship and sleeping on palliasses. No, it wasn't a convoy. They went over, the three of them went over themselves, but every night we had to go on boat drill because the sirens were going. They picked up the sound of a U-boat, this, that and the other. And later on, when we were almost across, one of the ships was torpedoed and during the night, and we just kept going, left him. But they said later that they got into Ireland, the north part of Ireland, and managed to limp into that port. Going to a place like England, you know, when they were being bashed about and they were bombed every night and so on, and seeing people how they could live with that. I mean, thinking now when you've had no experience of that, if you think, you know, going to bed at night, thinking it's strongly possible a bomb's going to land on me, you know, you couldn't handle that, could you? But they used to do it and laugh about it, you know. Incredible. For example, when the rockets were coming over, you know, London was hit with 1,000 of those rockets, all with 1,000-pound point, you know, explosive. I was in London, walking down the Strand one night, and just coming on for dusk, and there were a lot of people, pedestrians, in the footpath and so on. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, about a block away, there's a whoomph. A rocket had landed, and you could see all the sparks and flame going into the air. And I must tell you though that the government was frightened that the citizens would be afraid of these, you know. So they used to say, it appeared in the paper, there was an explosion, but it was a gas explosion. They used to get them regularly when something been damaged and there'd be a gas leak. The gas would build up somewhere, then suddenly it'd bang and go off. The gas leaks. Anyway, this happened. We were in the Strand, and whoosh, this goes up. Everyone stops and looks, you know. And someone said, "Oh, another gas explosion." And everyone said, "Oh yeah, another gas explosion." "Oh, of course it is." You know, big joke. And just kept walking. Incredible, isn't it? How could a city come like that? But they did. It's wonderful, isn't it? Mm. Finally, I did get a posting. It was to a training area where I had to learn more about radio and more about gunnery and this, that and the other. And then I got posted again to another place where I learned all about the secret application of radar. It turned out to be radar. And we were sworn to secrecy and all the rest of it. And then I was posted again to another place. And I was hearing on the grapevine of a lot of my mates, they'd gone on to operation squadrons, they're being killed. And, you know, I thought, what am I doing going around all these training places? Then it suddenly dawned on me I was heading for flying boats. And apparently it had to be top-notch to get onto flying boats, because it was different to land planes in that the crew did the maintenance on their own aircraft. Well, that didn't happen with bombers or any of the others. It was all done by ground staff, to go into hangar and so on. And anyway, I finally ended up at 461 Squadron, just being started up at that stage. But the aircraft, the Sunderland, was a beautiful aircraft. Very old, it was slow, but it was designed from a commercial aircraft, and it had all the benefits other aircraft didn't have. Big and roomy, and we had a kitchen and a wonderful toilet, which a flush toilet, but not only that, it was a big room, and it had a washing basin, a mirror, you could comb your hair. And there were 4 bunks, and big and roomy. It was a lovely aircraft. Oh, there were 11 on a crew. There was 2 pilots, 1 navigator, 3 wireless operator air gunners, 2 engineers, a fitter, and what they call a straight air gunner. Meant he was an air gunner but couldn't do anything else, and he was the tail gunner. But everybody, with the exception of the engineers, the navigator and the pilots, everyone else took a turn in the turrets, moving all the time, because we went out to find submarines. We had radar, but we weren't allowed to use it because the U-boats themselves could pick up the radar and gave them warning. And so you had to use your eyes, and you could only concentrate on search for 1 hour, and then you'd change and you'd get out and have a cup of tea or something, and so somebody else would take go into the turret. More or less, we had a roster with us, and we had to make sure that each turret had someone in it all the time. And so between that, like the 2 engineers, they'd swap jobs, and 3 radio, they'd swap jobs too. So it had to work in with the roster. There always had to be somebody in every position, but there's always a couple sort of free, having a chance to make a cup of tea, get something to eat. Thinking back, it was a wonderful aircraft, just so good. When you think of the bombers, every other aircraft, fighters or bombers, everyone's crammed in. But we just wander around the aircraft, Every one of the crew saw the end of the war. In fact, that was something that, when we first crewed up, when we were all new on the squadron, and the skipper was crewed up, made a crew, and we're told, that's your aircraft, it's you, aircraft out on the water. So the skipper got us all on there, he got it into one of the ward rooms, and he said, don't know about you blokes, but he said, I intend to see the end of this war, and I've decided that that's dependent on 2 things. Number 1 is luck. Well, you can't do anything about luck, can you? But number 2 is training and discipline, and we can do a lot about that. And we did. And if we had any spare time, if it was at us, we'd go do some fighter affiliation with fighters from elsewhere, or just even cleaning the aircraft. and learning about it. And, and he did it, and we all saw the end of the war. One fellow that got wounded, he didn't last long after the end of the war. When you finish the 800 hours, so went on what they laughingly called a rest. You have a rest, see. But that rest, you went to a training station and became an instructor there, and well, I did anyway, and then I did a lot of flying there too. And when the D-Day came, while this was a training station, it was made what they called a semi-operational. So we used to go out and doing operations anyway. So we got a lot of operational hours there too. See, the three of them, they were coming out with three to support each other, and it wasn't us that sighted them first, but the signal came through. They'd signalled back to base, and base signalled to us to go to that position to help with the U-boats. Anyway, we went to the position they told us, and there was nothing there. And so we signalled back, there's nothing here. And they said, sorry, we gave you the wrong position. Go to such and such a position. That's why we got short of fuel. And anyway, we got there and found them, and just in time to see an aircraft. It was a Liberator, a RAF Liberator, and it was attacking. And I was on the wireless at the time, and I had a little porthole. I looked out the porthole, I could see it, and you could see the shells coming up and all around this aircraft. And I thought, oh my God, they had each U-boat had 5 cannon, 20 millimetres, and they could put up a mighty big barrage. The shells were self-exploding shells. If they didn't hit a target at 500 or 600 yards or something, they'd explode anyway. And the sky was full of these puff balls, where the shells exploding. And I thought, oh my God. And we knew that Captain Walker's ships were pretty close. So I thought, oh, it'll be right. And the skipper will tell me to give the position to the ships and home them onto here. But he didn't. Next thing he went in, he pressed the klaxon to say we're attacking. And I thought, oh, you mad? We couldn't get through a barrage like that. And then the second pilot came on and said, hey Skip, why don't we go diagonally across and get the 3 in one go? They're both mad. Oh. But then we went, and he was, trying to dodge all the way, and but it was too much even for him, and he pulled out to port, and as he pulled out, he noticed that the Liberator was still there, and the Liberator had been following him in, and the Liberator had taken over, was going down. So he turned around and came in behind the Liberator, and the Liberator was hit, and it pulled off to starboard, smoking like anything. And then by this time we were pretty close to the U-boats, and for some unaccountable reason the nose gunner was firing at them, and suddenly the shooting stopped from the one we were after. Stopped. He went across, he dropped 7 depth charges, straddled it with 7 depth charges, and it broke the U-boat up. It split in half. It was, one would have sunk it, but he gave it 7. And it was going down, and he pulled around, and we had to take a photograph of the wreckage and survivors, whatever, so that we can prove that we sank a U-boat. Otherwise, you wouldn't be accepted. And as we flew over, you should have seen it. Looked down, and where it was sinking, it was the most horrible thing I've seen in my life. I was looking at it, and I was thinking, what have we done? What have we done? It was a support U-boat. It was full of oil, and as it went down, all this oil was gushing up, and in amongst it all was the bits of wreckage from the U-boat, and dead men, dead arms and legs. And, I'll never forget that. And anyway, we took our photographs and went round again, and the skipper said, drop them one of our dinghies. So we did. We dropped a dinghy, and there were about 10 survivors, and they swam over to it, and then Captain Walker's sloops came in, and they were picking up the U-boat that went in too was sinking, and their radar, this underwater thing, was picking them up, and I was thinking, U-boats, and they were throwing out depth charges, and these poor blokes in the water were copying it. That's another long story. But anyway, well, that was it. And that's when we left then and got another one on the way home, or at least attacked another one. We didn't get him. Amongst the survivors of the U-boat was the skipper, and it turned out that the U-boat was U-461 and our aircraft was U, a 461 Squadron, which was very unusual. And after the war I did several trips back to Germany, and I found the skipper, Wolf Stiebler, and we became good friends. I got friendly with some of the Luftwaffe boys in Germany, and the people that flew their flying boats, because they were boatmen and I was a boatman. Got to know them. One very friendly bloke, his name was George Eckel, and he had 9 Cross first class, and he was a funny sort of bloke, and I got very friendly with him, and I told him about sinking the U-boat and so on, and he was the one that actually looked around and found where Wolf Stiebler living, which was in Munich, in Bavaria, not far from where George Eckel lived. And George Eckel told me, and he said, "Why don't you write to him?" And I said, "Okay." So I wrote to him and got a letter back, and we had a few letters between each other, and so I thought I'd go and see him. So my wife and I took a trip over, and we met him in Munich and became good friends. He came out to Australia 1988. He spent Christmas with us, and I got to know some of the other blokes too that survived from the U-boat. We went on our way home and struck this other U-boat on the surface, and Dudley only had one DC depth charge. Only had the one left, so we went straight in. He was hoping to get him unawares, but he didn't. And anyway, we went straight into it and got a shell. Came through. In fact, we hit with 3 shells, and one of them went just above the bomb release gear, but he kept going over it, pressed the button, and the bomb hung up because that shell had put the release gear out of action, and we stuck with this thing up. He pulled away, and we're still flyable, only just, and so we set off for home and short of fuel anyway, and we couldn't get back to base, so he landed at the Scilly Islands, the Scilly Islands at the end of England, and he landed there, and we refuelled, and we took off and flew back to base, and the aircraft was announced unflyable, so we got new aircraft, fortunately. Number one was looking for U-boats and watching for Ju-88s, because they patrolled the bay too. We were looking for the U-boats, and the 88s had come out looking for us. And fortunately, the Bay of Biscay was quite cloudy as a rule, so we could, if we saw any German aircraft, we could hop into the cloud. But once it didn't happen, we had a cleared area, and there was a problem when they attacked. There were 6 of them that attacked us. And no, I was in the tail turret at the time. I saw them. I estimated they were 17 miles away. I reported to the skipper or to the navigator. And he said, all right, keep an eye on it. So the skipper opened it up a bit and couldn't get very far, so it got up to about 105 knots. I think, well, these Ju-88s could do 250. And they came closer and closer. I saw 1, but then as they come, there were 2, then there were 3, then there were 4, then there were 5, then there were 6. And they came along right up to us, and then they split up, and they went 2 on the port side and 4 on the starboard side, came up. And that's what gave us no hope, because they were obviously very well trained and knew what they were doing. Each one of them had 2 machine guns. I think it was 3 20mm cannons and 1 37mm cannon. So, we didn't think we'd have much good. Not only that, but, I say we knew what we were doing. The navigator took over, and the skipper, the leading man of the Germans Navy, he called in number 1, and he came in on an arc like that, and the navigator called out the skipper, dive to starboard, and he came in. Now he should have missed us. The skipper came in like that, but he sort of pulled in sharp. But if it had been done properly, he would have missed us on that one trip. And I was in the turret, and I swung the turret right round as far as I could. They were out of sight of me, but he's going to break away this way, I reckon. And he did. So he came that way. We went that way. And as he came round, he just missed the navigator, just missed it a little bit, and we got 3 shells. Bang, bang, bang. They went down, bang, bang, bang. And it came round. We came round. I got him in my sights. I thought, beauty, I've got him. And my guns and my turret were out of action, because there was an oil line that went from the inner engine, the starboard inner, back to give me all the power to operate the turret and fire the guns. And one of those 3 shells of all luck, they'd cut that line, and my turret was useless, and we were mine armament on the main armament on the gun. Anyway, there was a little handle I have. I could turn it around like that, and fire the guns by hand, which I did, but you can't do much. We fought them for about 3/4 of an hour. They got us down eventually. Surprisingly, no one was killed in the aircraft. We had 2 were wounded, and we got in the the 3 engines had been put out of kilter, and anyway, the skipper had to ditch it, and we got up on the top, and we'd winged one of the Ju-88. We last seen it going home, blowing out a lot of smoke. So there were 5 of them circling, and that was a bit of a worry. We all got out on top of the wing and got the wounded blokes up and laid them out on the wing. They were going around and around. What they going to do? We didn't know what they were going to do. And anyway, one of them peeled, the leader peeled off and he swooped down towards us. And the skipper said, I've never forgotten this, he said, "Sorry boys, can't do anything more for you. All I can say is, if he shoots, jump." And I thought, that's good advice. So I stepped over to the leading edge of the aircraft and watched it. And he didn't shoot. He just flew just a couple of feet above us and saluted, and they went. We had 3 dinghies. We got those up. We got all our food, cans of water, pyrotechnics, very light pistol, and various things we knew we'd want. And we had three rubber dinghies. And inflated those in the water and dived in and climbed into these. Got all the gear that we wanted. Oh, we had also a dinghy radio. Thinking we were pretty right now, we got all this gear and everything, and one of them blew up and sank, and it's been scratched by a bit of shrapnel. So we got everything then with the 2 dinghies, and then bang, another one went. So we got what we could into the one dinghy, and hoped that stayed like that. Anyway, we got everyone. We got 11 men in. It was a 6-man dinghy. No more than 6 men to get in, but we had 11 in, and we lost most of the gear we had too. That went down with the dinghies. Well, it was pretty rough. The waves, every now and again a wave would go over us, and it was dark, and the radio had an aerial, and it had a kite to fly the aerial so you get up, and it had a rocket to send the kite up, and it had a pistol to shoot off the rocket, but we didn't have the cartridges for the pistol, so we couldn't do anything, so we threw those away. But we did have some 2-star reds, little pyrotechnics held in your hand, and you pull a pin out, and 2 red stars that fly up. Anyway, late that night, or must have been about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was pretty dark, and we heard an aircraft engine. So skipper said, give me a 2-star red, quick. And someone gave me a 2-star red, and he pulled the thing out, but it was wet, it didn't go. The engines faded away, and he said, "I'll give you another one, I'll have it ready." And then we heard engines again, and he pulled the pin out, and the 2 stars went up. Big relief. Anyway, the aircraft came down. It was a Catalina with a big searchlight underneath, and they used to go out at night, and because the U-boats used to come up at night to charge their batteries. And so these Catalinas used to go out with big things. Anyway, when they saw the thing, they came down and shone out his searchlight on us. I was a bit worried. I thought he might think we were a U-boat and depth charges, but he didn't. He saw it and he stuck with us and he circled us and all that night. And in the morning when daylight came, he signalled us on the lamp, and he said, "Have to go. Fuel low. Help will arrive at 10 o'clock." And then he went, and we said, "Help! I wonder what it is. I wonder if he's getting another aircraft in, or with the ships." Anyway, it turned out to be the ships, fortunately. And so the ships came and got us on one of the ships. This was Captain Walker. He was out hunting subs too. He, in total, sank 35 U-boats, Captain Walker. He was the one that showed him how to sink U-boats. Anyway, got us on the ship. They put the wounded blokes into the sick bay, and we stayed with them, had a tour around for about, I don't know how long, I can't remember how long it was. Must have been about 4 or 5 days we were with them. Oh, it means a lot of happy memories, I must admit. It's something, I was very, well, during the Air Force, as they say, I was either bored to death or scared to death. You're one or the other. But it was great. I met some wonderful people and had a lot of experience out of that. No, I'm very pleased I went.